It was one of those crisp autumn mornings, the kind where the sun glows soft and golden, and the air has just enough chill to make you pull your coat tighter. James Harper, 75 years old, stood at his window, watching the leaves swirl gently down the quiet street of Franklin Heights. He smiled faintly, remembering a time when his legs were stronger, when he would jog these streets every morning, his army cap snug on his head. For over 20 years, this apartment building had been his home. To the neighbors, he was just Mr. James. The old man on the third floor, always polite, always the first to help carry groceries, always sitting on the front steps with a kind word or a quiet nod. Few people knew the truth of his past. 3 tours in Vietnam, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star. James had learned long ago that true strength didn't need to be announced. But that morning, as James checked his mailbox, the peace was broken. "Hey, old man." The voice was sharp, loud, and carried the kind of tone that made you wince before you even turned around. James turned slowly. A tall, confident man, maybe early 30s, was striding toward him, clipboard in hand, wearing a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Josh, the new property manager. "I've been looking over the records," Josh said, waving the clipboard like it was some kind of badge. "Looks like you're behind on some maintenance fees. We need to clear that up or we'll have to take another look at your lease." James raised an eyebrow, his calm, weathered face unchanging. "I've paid on time for 20 years. Josh gave a little chuckle, shaking his head. "Yeah, well, I wasn't here for 20 years, was I?" And just like that, James knew exactly the kind of man Josh was. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. The elevator servicing James's floor mysteriously stopped working. His reserved parking spot was suddenly unavailable, reassigned without notice. Neighbors started mentioning odd complaints filed under James's name. Noise violations, trash left in hallways, things James would never do. James kept his composure. He had faced bullets, bombs, and battlefields. He wasn't going to break over a smug property manager. But when Josh arrived one afternoon with 2 police officers in tow claiming there was a report of trespassing, something inside James shifted. The officers, embarrassed, left quickly after James calmly presented his lease and payment records, even offering them tea on the way out. Josh, however, was furious, his face red with frustration. That evening, James sat quietly in his small living room, the sunset casting long shadows across the old army photos lining his wall. He ran a hand over his medals, remembering fallen friends, hard-fought victories. He closed his eyes. Enough was enough. Quietly, deliberately, he picked up the phone. Not to Josh, not to the rental office, to the head office, the real owners. You see, what Josh had never bothered to check, what none of the neighbors knew, was that James wasn't just a tenant. He was the building's owner. Years ago, through a veterans investment program, James had purchased the entire property, leaving day-to-day management to a firm. He never bragged. He never needed to. But the time had come. 2 days later, a black luxury car pulled up into the building. A sharply dressed woman stepped out. Monica Ellis, the regional director. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She walked straight up to Josh. "Mr. Harper has requested a full review of your conduct," she said smoothly, her voice sharp and precise. "You're relieved of duty effective immediately." Josh's face drained of color. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he turned toward James, who stood quietly nearby, military cap tucked under one arm, his old but steady gaze fixed on the young man. I I didn't know, Josh stammered. James gave him a small, polite smile, the kind of smile that carried years of wisdom, of battles fought and won. That's the thing about respect, son, James said softly. You're supposed to give it to everyone, not just the people you think can fire you. That night, the building felt different. Neighbors knocked on James's door, bringing homemade cookies, little thank you notes, even shy hugs. James accepted them all with his usual grace, his quiet nods, his gentle smiles. Later, as the sky turned deep orange and the last light of day slipped away, James sat by his window, looking out over the street he'd called home for so long. On the shelf beside him sat the tokens of his past, the medals, the folded flag, the framed photo of a young soldier smiling beside his unit. James let out a slow breath, because in the end he knew real strength isn't about loud voices or flashy displays. It's about knowing who you are and never letting anyone, no matter how loud they are, take that from you.